as you try to figure out what's going on, keep in mind you can't really get the full picture because of the clampdown on information. And so in the conversation that we're about to have, we're going to go through what we think we know. In some cases, we might be wrong. Just want to be honest about that up front. Very hard to know what the truth is at this stage, really at any stage, but particularly in the face of this kind of censorship. But we're going to try to be as honest as we possibly can and provide as much information as we possibly can, given the limitations, because this war matters, maybe more than most wars. This war hasn't been settled. Clearly, there are parties who would like to settle it, but no one person is in charge of whether it gets settled. Israel is a partner in this war, probably the first war the United States has ever fought with a true partner with decision-making authority. It's very different from going into Afghanistan with a NATO coalition. Norway didn't have veto power over anything, but Israel does. And so it's complex, very complex, and the Iranians have their own, of course, completely different agenda. So it may not be settled anytime soon. We're praying that it is. But more fundamentally, this is a different kind of war. So over the course of our lifetimes, most wars the United States has fought, all of them really on some level wars of choice. The U.S. hasn't been invaded really since 1812. So all of these are wars that the U.S. government decided to become involved in or start. And pretty much all of them were initiated on the same pretext, which is we are preserving the order of the world, the international order, the rules-based order, whatever you want to call it. We're preserving the way things are. And this country we're going to war with violated the rules. Therefore, we're going to war to restore the rules. That is not what we're watching now. There's some evidence that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, thought that's what this was about. Iran wants to get nukes. They can't have nukes. We can't have more nuclear proliferation. You can't have rogue states with nuclear weapons. Weapons of mass destruction are bad. Got it. We've heard that before. Of course, the effect of this will be to radically accelerate proliferation around the world, because what's the lesson of what we're doing right now? You better have nukes or else you're going to get regime changed. No one's trying to regime change North Korea because they have nukes. So the incentive for every small but reasonably wealthy country as of right now is get nukes as quickly as you can, because you're going to get regime changed if you don't, potentially. And if you're a bystander to a war and happen to get caught up in it, like the Gulf states are right now, no one is going to protect you. These security guarantees, formal and informal, are not real. Downtown Dubai can still get destroyed and your economy destroyed for a generation because who's going to stop it? You're on your own. So countries that feel they're sincerely on their own have every incentive to have the most effective deterrence possible, and that would, at this point, be nuclear weapons. So you're going to see a lot more nuclear-armed states in the next few years, without question. So if the point of this was to preserve the status quo on nukes, it had the opposite effect. But the point of this was not to preserve the status quo at all. It was to overturn the status quo, to usher in a new age. That's the point of this war. This is a pivot in history, and a lot of the people supporting it know that. Now, they're really in two groups. One are people motivated by religious impulse. That would include some Israelis, some religious Jews, not all, but some. And that would include some Christians, Christian Zionists. And both groups believe that they're helping to accelerate the end of history. Armageddon, the end of time, the return of the Messiah, whatever, however you want to describe it. But both groups believe that history is linear. It began in one place and arrives at another with the return of God to earth. And then history ends, and we are redeemed or damned, depending. So that's the basic idea. And both of these groups seem under the impression that they can force God's hand, that they can bring this about through an act of will or violence, which is to say both groups believe on some level that they are God, which they are not. They're not in charge of history. And you can't force God's hand. He's in charge. You are not. But both groups have lost sight of that. So that's their motive. And then there are secular boosters of the war, promoters of the war, planners of the war. And their vision, while not strictly speaking religious, is not really so different. They would like to usher in rule by technology, whether that's mass surveillance, whether it's transhumanism, the merging of man and machine. But the rule of the earth by technology. And there are a lot of people who want this, and a lot of people who think it's inevitable. And this is the moment where that age of history begins with this war. So again, this is not a war that is confined to the region. This is not a war between the United States and Israel and Iran. This is not a war designed to prevent a rogue state from getting nukes. It was never that. This is a war designed to usher in a new age of man, a new period in history, a new world. And so wars like that are fundamentally theological in nature. That's theology. Whether it's secular or religious, it's still theology. These are articles of faith. This is an eschatology. And wars like that aren't resolved quickly because we're talking not just about disarming a madman. We're talking about changing the nature of life on this planet forever. So big stakes in the minds of the people pushing this, and that means this is going to go on for a while, declared or not. And as it does, how do we respond? Well, we pray. Number one, the most effective thing you can do is to say prayers for peace. Number one most effective thing you can do. But two, keep an eye on the effect of this war on us here in the United States. We're prosecuting this war. We're the main combatant here. We're spending the most money, dropping the most bombs. And how do we do that? So the key, really, whether you think this is insane, as a lot of people do, probably the majority of the country believes that, or you think it's necessary, some people do believe that, Fox News viewers believe that, Democratic leaders believe that in the House and Senate. But no matter what side you're on, the United States needs to behave with honor. Now, why is that? Because that's the whole point of being the United States. You can't have wars in a democratic republic or in a country where the people supposedly rule, where their consent is necessary, whether it is or not. That's what we tell ourselves. You can't have wars unless you believe that you are, on the deepest level, better than the people you're fighting. We're not savages. They are. Therefore, we get to kill them. And we've always told ourselves that, and in some cases it has been absolutely true. Whether we can kill them or not is another question. It's a moral question, but as a sort of matter of civic engagement, the population has to believe they're better than the people they're fighting, or else you can't have the war. And you're really sort of flirting with revolution at that point, and we don't want that. So in order to believe you're better than your opponent, you have to be. You have to behave with honor. And so, for example, if innocents are killed, girls at a school, to name a current example, you have to believe that it was accidental, and you have to say out loud that was wrong. And in this specific case, the bombing of a girls' school next to an Iranian naval base that was apparently the school of choice for officers at the naval base. These were the children, the daughters of the people we're fighting. You have to believe that was accidental. Despite the fact it was hit twice, 40 minutes apart, looks very much like a double tap, which is to say a bombing and then an attack on the people coming to rescue the injured. That's what it looks like. But as an American, you have to believe this was a tragic mistake. But we have to verify that. We have to know for certain that it was in order to keep our honor. Because if you wake up in the morning and you're living in the kind of country that thinks it's okay to kill not simply military officers, but their daughters, that country's not worth fighting for. Now, speaking for myself, I am assuming that was a tragic mistake. But it's important to get to the bottom of it. How did this happen? Were these autonomous weapons that made the decision? Was there an AI program that targeted this school, that thought it was something else, or thought it was within bounds, and targeted it, bombed it, and then bombed it again 40 minutes later? If that's the case, no more autonomous weapons for us. Should we really be making life or death decisions with a machine, with no human interaction, no human sign-off on that? Of course not. That's grotesque. To hand the power of life and death over to a machine, that's just transparently insane. Of course, you would never do that if you were a civilized country. And we can't do that. Did we do that? We need to find out, and if we did, we can't do that again. And we have to apologize for it. You can't kill the children of your enemies. In fact, you can't kill innocents, period, because we're the West, and we believe that people are responsible for the sins they commit, not for the sins their relatives committed, or their ancestors, or their future descendants, or people who look like them. We don't believe that because we believe in the individual soul. Each person individually accountable to God and to the U.S. military for the things he does right and wrong, period. Collective punishment is the opposite of what we believe. That's what Israel believes. And that's why on a basic level, Israel does not have a Western outlook, because the Israeli government believes it is okay to kill people on the basis of their bloodline. They are Amalek, as the prime minister often says, again and again and again. This is Amalek. Kill not just the perpetrator, but his wife, his children, their children, his pets. This is a theological concept that Christians and the West reject as grotesque and evil. We cannot participate in that, ever, because the moment we do, we are not better than the people we're fighting at all, and we can't have that. It's a stain on all of us. So we need to find out what happened there. And the second thing we need to do is make certain that the diplomatic efforts the United States made to get to a political agreement before the war were legitimate, that they weren't a ruse designed to distract and trap the Iranians. Why? Because an honorable nation does not engage in that kind of deceit and trickery. An honorable nation states its objectives out loud, attempts in good faith a political nonviolent solution, and then if that fails, resorts to force. That's the American tradition. That's the Western tradition. That's not the Eastern tradition, but it's our tradition, and we have to uphold it. And as of right now, we have to believe that's what we did, and that it just didn't work, couldn't come to terms. And so President Trump was effectively forced by the Israeli government into this decision to go to war. But if it ever emerges that our diplomatic efforts with Iran, both in February of this year and in June of last year, were fake, and they were designed to lull the Iranians into a false sense of security so we could launch a sneak attack on them, how is that better than Pearl Harbor? How is that better than any dishonorable sneak attack in history? Of course, it's not. It's low. It's beneath the United States. It's beneath us as American citizens. And anyone who participated in that needs to be punished for it right away. And as a practical matter, it makes diplomacy of all kinds impossible. How do we settle the conflict between the United States and Russia using Ukraine, poor Ukraine, as a proxy? We fight the war, Ukrainians die. How do we settle that conflict? By the way, a lot of us wish it had been settled before launching a war on Iran, because now the Russians are, of course, giving targeting information to the Iranians. Why wouldn't they? We've done the same with the Ukrainians for the last 4 years. That should have been settled. But it's going to be hard to settle it now because the message to the rest of the world is American diplomacy is fake. It's not real. You send negotiators in, they distract us, and then you prepare a sneak attack on us. Now, we don't know that's what happened. There's no proof that's what happened. But we need to find out what exactly did happen, because you can't behave that way. It's a disservice to American citizens if you behave that way. And it makes our future much, much tougher. Much, much tougher. So giving the full benefit of the doubt to the United States as a default position as Americans, and we need to get to the truth of that and everything else that's happening in this war. Spring is the most refreshing time of year. Nothing compliments it better than Black Rifle coffee. Lots of it. This is an American company founded by veterans with conviction. They built the whole thing around a simple idea. Do it right or just don't do it. They're definitely doing it right. We know because we drink it all day long. If you want coffee without theatrics, start with just black, whole bean if you grind it yourself, ground if you don't. No sweeteners designed to disguise mediocrity. No seasonal gimmicks masking weak beans. Just bold American roasted coffee that delivers what it promises. And if you prefer variety without lowering the bar, try these supply drop variety rounds, a curated lineup of pod roasts that rotate in but never compromise strength. Consistency, standards, discipline, out with watered-down blends, in with pure American coffee. You can grab just black or supply drop variety rounds at Amazon or go right to blackriflecoffee.com to stock up from the source. Black Rifle Coffee, veteran-founded, American-roasted, still standing, still brewing. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.